Hello and welcome back to another video in the Complete Web Dev series. In this video we are going to continue on with our CMS, our content management system that we are building. Now we are building this with object-oriented programming using PHP, and the main purpose of this series is to learn concepts that help strengthen our object-oriented programming mindset and to help solidify our knowledge on object-oriented programming. It's not to build the best content management system on the market or anything like that. That would be silly and ridiculous. I just want to make sure we have the goals set in our heads of what we're actually trying to do. So in this video, what we're going to do is we are going to add our login form and take care of some of our login stuff. So we had the register form and we've registered a user. So let's go ahead and work on adding that. So I'm going to switch over to my screen here. And let me just clear this to make sure that this is up and running. Let's make sure that examp is up and running. So sudo opt lamp examp start, and it is for me. And my password, see that it is already running. And then I'm going to do a get branch just to see my local branches here. And I'm going to go ahead and use v25. So we'll do a get checkout -b v25. Now once I've done that, my local branch is set, but I want to push this local branch to the remote. So I'm going to go ahead and do get push -- set - upstream origin v25. Once I've done that, we are ready to start coding. And so some of the files that we're going to need open in this is we're going to need to go to our app controllers and open up auth controller. Once you have that open, go ahead and go to your models and open up your users model. And then go ahead and go to views. We're going to need to add a new file here in auth. So right click on auth and click new file, and we'll just call this login.php. So we'll have that file open there. It's a new file. The next thing that we're going to need open, well, let's just start there. So let's go ahead now and let's work on adding this auth controller. So back in the browser here, what we want to do is we want to navigate to cms/auth/login. That is going to be the path to our login form. Now you'll see that it says that the login action does not exist on the controller. So let's go now and look at the auth controller. We have the register action here. So let's go ahead and add this controller action, and this will be public function login action. Okay, so once we have that, we can go ahead and set up some of our basic things that we're going to need to do in this login action. The first thing that we're going to want to do here is instantiate a user's object. So we'll just say user equals new users. So that will instantiate a new user object. Now this users comes from our model here. So we have our users model. That's exactly what we want. So now we will have a new user object set to the parameter user in memory. The other thing is I'm just going to go ahead and create a variable here that's going to hold a boolean, and we're going to initialize that with the value of false. So we have a false value there on the is error. The next thing that we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to set some parameters for our view. So we'll say this view, and then we're going to send our errors to our view. And that is going to be equal to user get errors, and that is a method that's on our model. So we our users model extends the core model, and that get users is on there. So that's the reason we can use that. We're going to go ahead and pass the user down. So we'll say this view user. So that will set a property on our view object, and we'll say is equal to our user, and that will be right here. So we're just passing that into our view. And then the next thing we're going to do is do this view, and we're going to call the render method, and that will render our login.php right here. So let's go ahead now and refresh. Okay, we have an empty screen, and that's because we haven't done anything here on the form yet. Let's see if there's anything else that we want to do before we get going. I think we'll go ahead and work on the view really quick, because it shouldn't be that hard. On the view, go ahead and open some PHP tags, and we're just going to type in use core /fh, which will be our form helpers. All right. The next thing that I want to do here is we're going to go ahead and do this start, and we're starting the content of our view here, and we will go ahead and skip down a few lines, and we'll do PHP this end. Now these start and end methods are methods that are on our view, and this will allow us to place any content in between the start and end in our default layout. So let's go ahead now and create a div with a class of row. So we have a div with a class of row, and inside of that, let's go ahead and create a div with a class of call medium 8. Now that is the bootstrap column medium 8, but we're going to add a few more here. We're going to add offset md2, that'll center it, and then we're going to give it a class of poster, which is a class that we created in our styles.css right here. So once we have that, now we just need to go ahead and give it a header. So I'm going to use an h2 here, and this h2 we're just going to put login. So let's save this and make sure everything's looking right so far. And there we go. We have our little poster that's centered on the screen, looking good to me so far. Let's go ahead and start adding our form elements though. So underneath this h2, I'm going to go ahead and create a form. We're going to leave the action empty. We'll just remove that actually. And then we'll add the method equal to post, because we want to post. And then what we're going to do is let's create our cross-site request forgery field here. So we can do that by echoing out our form helper class, and it's calling the static method CSRF field, and that will add our hidden field. So if I save that now and refresh, it's not going to look any different, but if I right click on it and inspect it, we can see that if we dive into this form, we have this input right here, and this input has a type of hidden, and it has a value here for this cross-site request forgery key, and it's got a name of CSRF token. So this will help us avoid cross-site request forgery attacks. So just a little bit of security. We want to go ahead and do that on all of our forms. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add a div with a class of row, and then we're going to add two inputs here. So I'm going to go ahead and echo out form helper input block. Okay, and then the label here will just be email. The ID will be email. The value is going to be this user email. And then for the input, let's go ahead and give it a class, and we're going to give that a class equal to form control. Now these classes come from Bootstrap. And then let's go ahead and give it a type of, oops, I forgot the type of text. So that will be our input attributes. Let's go ahead now and add our wrapper attributes, and this is going to be pretty simple. We're going to give it a class, and we're going to give it a class of form group, and also a class of call medium 6, which will create a half width field here. And then we just need to give it our errors. So we can say this errors. Okay. Oops, we don't need that semicolon. That was a mistake. Okay, so go ahead and take a look at that. Make sure you have it correct. It's form helpers input block. This is going to be the first parameter is the label. This is going to be the ID and the name. This right here is going to be the value. This array is going to be an array of input attributes. This will be our wrapper class attributes, that next one. Sometimes I hate stupid. This right here is an array with our wrapper class attributes, and then we're passing in as the last parameter our errors. Okay, now that we've done that, let's go ahead and add one more field here. And what I'd like to do here is kind of do the same thing. We're going to do an echo, and we'll do fh input block. And our first element here will just be password. Now that parameter is our label. This next one is going to be our ID. And then we say this user password. All right. And then we're going to do our input, and our this array will be our input attributes. This will be our wrapper attributes, and this will be our errors. So we'll say this errors. Okay, now that we've done that, let's go ahead and give these things some stuff. So let's say we're going to give the input a class of form control, and let's give it a type of password. All right, that should be sufficient. Now let's go ahead and give the wrapper a class as well, and this will be the same as the previous. So it'll be form group and call medium 6. So let's save that now, and let's go back and refresh. All right, so now you can see we have an email and a password field here. Okay, so we have email and password. This will allow us to log in. Let's see, the next thing that I'd like to do is let's add another div with a class of row here. So we'll say div.row, and what we're going to do here, we'll do a div class call in there, and we're just going to add a check mark, which I need to check if we've actually created that yet. So we'll say fh.check, and I have not created that yet, so I guess we'll have to do that. So we'll say remember me will be the label. It'll be called remember. We'll give it a value of this user remember, and we're going to check if that's equal to on. The next thing we'll do is give this a class form check input, and then we'll give the wrapper class form group and form check, and then we'll pass in this errors. Okay, so just go ahead and double check that you have this filled out right. Now we don't have this form helpers check created yet, so we need to do that. So let me pull that up. All right, so go to core and pull up our FH for form helpers class here, and underneath the select block, I'm going to go ahead and create that method right there. So it's going to be a public static method, or function rather, called check. Open and close the curly braces, and then it's going to take several params. We're going to do our label, we're going to do our ID, we're going to do checked, and that'll be equal to a blank string. We'll do our input attributes, that'll be an empty array, and we'll do our wrapper attributes, that will also be an array, and then errors, and that will also be an array by default. All right, so what we need to do here is let's go ahead and get our input attributes. So we'll say input attributes are equal to self append errors, and we're going to pass in the ID, the input attributes, and the errors like that. The next thing that we want to do is get our wrapper string, and that will be equal to self process attributes, and then we're just going to pass in our wrapper attributes there. All right, now we need our input string, and we're going to do the same thing where we say self process attributes, and we're going to pass in our input attributes. So that'll be an array, and when we pass it in as this process attributes, it's going to turn it into string parameters that we can add to our input. The next thing that we'll do is we need to know if it's checked. So we'll do our checked string, and we're going to say checked is, if checked is equal to on, then we're going to do checked, else it's just going to be an empty string. So a ternary operator here, little if else statement there. The next thing that we're going to do is start our HTML. So this will be a div, and we will go ahead and put our wrapper string in there. All right, once we have that, we'll continue on the next line here. We'll just do a dot equals to concatenate onto that HTML string, and we're going to concatenate on our input. We're going to do type, and then I'm going to use a backslash double quote here, and then we'll say checkbox backslash double quote, and then we'll do ID equals backslash double quote backslash double quote, and in between there we're going to put in our ID. The next thing that we want to do is do name is equal to backslash double quote, and we will put in ID for the name as well. And then we're going to put in our input string, and then our checked string. So this will let us know if it's checked or not. And then what we're going to do here is give that closing little, oops, this is supposed to be inside of that double quote, and there we go. So I must have spelled something wrong here. There we go. Continuing on, we're going to add more to this, so we can say dot equals to concatenate more on, and now we're going to do a label, and the label is going to have a class equal to, we'll do backslash double quote and be form, oops, form check label, and we'll say for backslash double quote, we'll say ID, and then we're going to close that label, and we'll go ahead and do a closing label tag here, and then we'll also go ahead and do a closing div tag to close out the main wrapper div. And inside of the label tags, we just need to add our label. All right, and then at the end of this, we're just going to return HTML and save that. Let's go back now and just refresh and see what we got. So that's obviously not right. What did I do? And that's because this type is missing this equal sign there. There we go. So now we have this remember me checkbox that we can use, and now we have a new form helper function that we can call when we need to. Let me get a drink of water really quick. I apologize. That water bottle probably sounded crazy on the microphone. Okay, so let's go back to the view. So this is our view. We have our checkbox, and let's just finish up the view now. So we're going to go down underneath this closing div right here. And we're going to add another div, and we're going to give this a class of text-write. And then what we're going to do is give this an anchor tag, and we'll say href is equal to, and inside here we're going to echo out our root of our site, and then it's going to be auth. Oops. Inside this double quotes, auth /login. And then we'll give it a class equal to button and button dash secondary. Now these are all Bootstrap styles that give us button styles. And I meant to close that. And then inside of here, we're just going to put cancel. So let's save that now and just go back and look at this. So now we have this cancel button over here, and it's going to take us to the auth login. And I'm just going to go ahead and show you where you can see some of these. In case you haven't used Bootstrap yet, Bootstrap's just a CSS library that we're using here. And if you look in components and click on buttons, here's where I'm getting these button classes. So button and button primary, secondary, success, all of that. So that's how we're getting these classes. So Bootstrap gives us these classes, we're just using them. Okay, so next thing we want to do is add a login submit button over here. So what we can do is after our cancel button, let's just go ahead and add an input. And we're going to give this a class equal to button and button primary. And we'll give this a value equal to login. The type here is going to be submit. And we'll just close that out like that. So we have that input there. Let's refresh. And now we have this login button. So cool. All right, that will be it for the view. So our view is just 27 lines of code. So not bad for a full login HTML. So I hope you guys appreciate how little code this actually is to build this form. And that's really what the power of doing this with MVC is. Now this page, it has our menu still, and it has our background styles and everything else, but it also has the ability to quickly add content into the view. All right, so now that we have that done, let's go ahead and just close that for now. We're not going to need that open right now. Let's go ahead and start handling the auth controller, and we need to start handling if they submit the form. And so let's go ahead and work on that. So right here underneath this is error. Let's go ahead and do an if statement here. We're going to say if this request. Now remember, we created that function called isPost. So if they've posted, then it's going to go inside of this. If they haven't posted anything, it's not going to go in here. So this is only if they've submitted the form. All right, and then what we're going to do is let's do our session. And we're going to do our cross-site request forgery check here to make sure that the key is correct. CSRF, and I spelled that wrong. CSRF, there we go. All right, so now we are checking for our cross-site request forgery, our session key there. And then we're going to say user email is equal to this request get email. All right, and then we'll say user password is equal to this request get password, and we'll say user remember is equal to this request get remember. All right, so that will set the properties on the user object to the requested form fields. Okay, so we have email, password, and remember. Those were actually, and I closed it down already, but in our view we had those inputs, and that is what we're setting right there. The next thing that we want to do is we want to call a method on our user model called validate login. Okay. The next thing that we're going to do here is that we haven't created that validate login thing yet, which is going to be pretty easy. But first, let's go ahead and do an if statement here. We're going to say if empty we're going to say if empty user get errors. Now we have to call that again because we're calling it after this validate function here. If that, then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and work on, we're going to continue checking if the password is correct, and then eventually we'll log in the user. So we'll do continue with the login process. Okay. Let's go ahead now and take care of this validate login method. So go to, let's save that and go to users. Now, if you notice here in our users model, we don't have that validate login method. So underneath this before save method, let's go ahead and create it. So I'm going to create it right here. It's going to be called public function validate login, and then we need to run a couple different pieces of validation here, and what we can do actually is just copy the email one up here with this required. So I'm going to copy that line and put it and paste it in here. The next one we're going to do is we're going to get the required for the password. So I'm just going to copy this line for the required validator password and put it in here. And then that'll be it. So we're just going to run our validation that we've already set up previously, but we just need to check email and password there. The next thing that we're going to do, so let's just go ahead and check that real quick. If I refresh this, just hit login, and now you see that it says that email is a required field and password is a required field. So that's good. That's exactly what we expect because they didn't send an email or a password in. So if that validation passes, then it will continue on with the process. So let's continue there. Let's go back to our auth controller here. So if they send this in, if both of those have something filled out, it's going to make it into this if check right here. So let's see, the first thing that we're going to do there is we're going to find the user by the email address. So we're just going to call this u because I don't want to conflict with our other user right here. So we're going to say u is equal to users, and we'll say find first. So we're going to use our find first method, and we're going to add an array inside that, and I'm going to hit enter to break into that. And then we're going to give it some conditions here, and the conditions are going to be that the email is equal to email, like that, and then we're going to bind, and that will be an associative array. The key will be email because that matches right here with this colon. And then what we're going to pass in is this request get email. Okay. So then we're going to figure out if there is a user. So let's do an additional check here. We're just going to say if you, so if that user exists, then we're going to see if they're verified. So this will check that they have the correct password. So we're going to say verified is equal to password underscore verify. Now that you've seen this before, in a previous chapter. This is a function that this is a function that's built into PHP. So we're checking the password there up against the second parameter here, which will be comma, and then we're going to pass in u password. And if that hash verifies against the one that they submitted from the form, then this verified will be equal to true. Else this is going to be false. Okay. The next thing that we're going to do here is we're going to do another if statement here, and we're going to say, hey man, if verified, then we're going to log the user in. Okay. And so you know what, let's set this is error to true by default. And then let's, inside of this verified right here, let's do is error, and we're going to set that equal to false, just in there. All right. Then what we're going to do is, let's see. Let's handle this error response. So let's say they entered the wrong email, the wrong password. Let's go down here, and outside of this if statement and outside of this if statement, just inside this is post, we're going to go ahead and add if is error. Okay, so if is error. Then what we're going to do is we don't want to give them a specific, like the thing is, you don't want in a login form, if someone types the wrong email address, you don't want to tell them they typed the wrong email address. And if they type the correct email address or an email address that exists in your database, but they have the wrong password, we don't want to tell them that either. So in this case, giving them a vague error message is what we want to do. And so we're just going to set it on the user. So it'll be this user set error, and we're going to set it on the email property, and we're just going to say this, we're going to say something is wrong with the email or password, please try again. Okay, just do our semicolon there, and then we're also going to set an error on our password field, but we're just going to set that to an empty string. And the reason we're going to do that is because we want the password field to come back red as well. So let's save this now, and let's just go and test a few things out. I'm going to refresh here. Oops. Not going to refresh. I'm going to reload the page. Not with the reload. I just clicked it and hit enter. And I'm gonna go ahead and type in the correct stuff, but I'm gonna give it a wrong password. So it has the correct email, but I'm giving it the wrong password. All right, so we got a problem now, and it says that undefined property auth controller user on line 70. So let's go see if we can figure that out. Ooh, yep. This is not on this controller. This was actually just, we set this just as a variable. So I just need to call user set error. So let's go back now, click this and hit enter again, and let's try that again. I'm going to put in the wrong password. All right, so now these did not verify, so it did not log the user in, and it made it into this error check, and it sets this error. Okay, and then it sets an error on the password. It just doesn't give it a string, so there's nothing written or displayed underneath this input. It's just red. And then this just says something is wrong with the email or password, please try again. So I like that. I think that's sufficient there. So now let's go ahead and let's pass in, let's work on the login stuff. So the login is going to be right here. Let's do, we need to know if remember is set. So we'll say remember, and that's going to be equal to this request get remember, and we're going to see if that's equal to on. If it is, then that will be true, and if not, it'll be false. And then we're just going to say you login. That'll be a function that we need to create still, and we're going to pass remember into it. So it'll be true or false whether or not to pass that in. The next thing that we're going to do is do a router redirect, and we're just going to redirect them to the home screen. So we can pass an empty string there. All right, so we haven't created this login method yet, so let's go ahead and do that. Now this is a user object, so we need to go to our model and go to our users model, and let's create a new method here called public function, gotta spell that correctly, login, and we're gonna pass in remember, and by default that's gonna be set to false. Okay, so we're gonna be sending that from our form, but by default it will be false. And then we're going to do a session get, and we want to get the logged in user. Oops, I'm sorry. So this is session set, not get. So we're setting a session called logged in user, and we're setting it equal to this ID. So in this context, this is the user. And so the user ID will be set into the session. Now it's complaining because we don't have this session imported up here. So let's go ahead and do that. We can do that here. Let's go ahead and create a group around this core. And we just need to include our session. And while we're here, go ahead and add the cookie class as well, because we are going to need that. So we just created a group use statement. And then we go back down here, and now you see the red squigglies are gone because it is imported there. Okay, the next thing that we want to do is we're going to do self $_current user and set that equal to this. Did we set that up yet? We did not. So right here, we're going to do a protected static method here, and it'll be $_current user, and by default that will be false. Okay, so now we can store the current user that's logged in into that static property. The next thing that we need to do is handle our, we want to handle if they passed in remember, then we're actually going to have to do a little bit more with our login function. But I think we'll save that for another video. Let me see how long we're running here. Yeah, this video is getting up to be almost 40 minutes. So let's test this real quick. In the next video we'll finish up the login stuff, but let's see if I add the right password here and I hit login. We did redirect, and if I right click, let's see now if we have a session. So if we go back to the index page, go to index.php, and let's do something here. Let's just do a die, and actually, you know what? Let's do h dump and die, and we'll $_session to see our sessions. And we're just going to look and see if there's a logged in user there. So I'll need to add the H right here in order to do that. So this is, you don't have to follow along, I'm just showing you. So if I refresh now you see that there's a session stored in our sessions on PHP called logged in user with the underscore there, and the value of that is set to an integer of 7. And if we go to our database and look, my user ID is 7, so that is correct. We have a logged in user now, and that's exactly what we want. In the next video, what we're going to do, let me just go and get rid of that so we're not confused when we come back next video why that doesn't work. But in the next video, what we want to be able to do is on our auth login form, we want it to, if they click remember me, we're going to go ahead and set a cookie to their browser. And if they have that cookie set when it loads the app, so in our index, the root of our app being loaded, we're going to go ahead and auto log them in with that cookie. So we'll do that in the next video, which will get us to the point of having our login process done. All right, guys, I hope that makes sense. Let me know. We got kind of a lot done in this video. We, created our login action inside of our auth controller. We created our view, our login view through our auth view here. And we've added more functionality to both our form helpers class in the form of this check, and also we've added more functionality to our users model. This users model will grow substantially because we're going to have a lot of functionality in here. All right, guys, well, I hope you're enjoying this. Please comment, like, subscribe. That really does help me out. And if you'd like some sweet merch, head over to freeskills.life. And I will see you guys in the next video. I'm proud of you guys, sincerely.